Welcome to Intro to Philosophy. My name is Grant Yoakum. I'm going to be your instructor for this semester, and as you can see, the format of the course delivery is going to be for this online course through YouTube. So you get to see me in various office spaces. Sometimes my cat will jump into frame and help me explain something. He's a big boy. You'll like him. His name's Sheldon. I've been teaching for Oakland University since winter of 2005, which makes that a really long time at this point. I've been teaching Intro to Philosophy, Introduction to Ethics. I started my teaching career at University of Michigan Dearborn in the fall of 2004, but before that, as part of my graduate education, I was an assistant. So I should have lots and lots of experience to draw on to see if I can't convey this material. Now, the point of today's video lecture is going to be to go over your syllabus. You see, I'm old school. I printed a hard copy. It's available online through Moodle. You should have all received an email from me asking you to check Moodle and to read this over carefully. So what we're going to do today is go over this so that you're clear on what the expectations of the course are, and I'll give you a little bit of background in sort of navigating the fairly simple electronic, online, sort of cloudy kind of stuff that we're going to use in this course. So, first thing you find on the syllabus is the name of the course, Introduction to Philosophy, if you're screening this video and aren't in the course. Well, I suppose screen away, it doesn't matter. What we're doing this semester for fall, it says 2011, that's my first typo, fall 2012. Is section 7 and 8, CRN 42349 and 42943. College of Art and Sciences, Department of Philosophy, and like I say, first typo, my apologies, I'll fix it on the syllabus that's online. This course meets virtually, and your primary way to get a hold of me is via email. And please don't hesitate to contact me via email if you have any problems whatsoever. I'm going to say that again because it's important. Contact me if you have any problems with the course whatsoever. Don't wait until the night before the exam if you're reading through the material and you hit a passage that just doesn't make sense to you. Send me an email. If you're struggling with one of the ideas that I've introduced in one of these video lectures, please contact me. Right? If you're unclear on what's expected of you for any of the assignments, contact me. You're detecting a theme coming on now. So my email is yoakum@oakland.edu. From time to time in semesters, I have requests from students to call them at their home phone number. I don't like to do that, but what I will do is schedule, with a little bit of notice, a Skype meeting with you so that we can have a real-time one-on-one video interaction, and that way it's a little bit more personable as well. Though, like I say, it's, hey, can you meet me on Skype in 15 minutes? Probably isn't going to work out because, well, we're all busy. We all have schedules. That's why we're doing this in online format. So, on the syllabus, you'll see a course catalog description, Gen Education, learning outcomes and course objectives, cross-cutting capacities, blah, 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 all of that stuff. It's boilerplate. It's taken directly from the course calendar. So, I assume you found this course, so you found this material in the course calendar. I can leave that to you to read. Now, onto the textbooks, and I'm sure you're freaking out about this. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 textbooks, right? But what you've probably also discovered if you've been to the bookstore or been to the bookstore online course, you've got to expect that, is that they're fairly reasonably priced. The meat of the course is going to be from these either Hackett translations, or I've managed to get some Penguin, and the portable is Penguin as well. So these are pretty common books, and they print a lot of copies, and this is glorious capitalism at work. The more you print, the more you sell, the cheaper it is to sell one, and the cheaper the books are. All right, these old Hackett books are old translations, but good translations with excellent notes in them that the editor has included. So I've chosen these partially based on price, but partially based on the quality of the translation and the sort of instructional notes that the editor has included as well. So please try and take full advantage of the texts. All of these texts are required, and all of them should be available through the sort of Barnes & Noble Oakland University bookstore. So, what are the texts? Plato's 5 Dialogues. Sometimes it's also presented as the Trial and Death of Socrates. This is early work, so even though it says Plato here, the dialogues themselves, certainly the two that we're going to be taking a look at, the Apology and the Crito, are early Platonic dialogues, where, and there's some debate about this, but nonetheless, where some scholars believe that Plato is simply reporting Socrates' position. Right? So, if I'm referring to the 5 dialogues, the Apology or the Crito, I am making the distinction. I am saying that this is Socrates. Socrates himself never actually wrote anything down, so we rely on Plato's account to give us Socrates' position. The second book we will be moving to is Plato's Phaedrus. Phaedrus? Phaedrus. Right? Now, this is a late dialogue, right? And to do the same thing that I'm doing with this, a lot of people usually turn to Plato's Republic, where you see a beautiful marriage of Plato's metaphysics, his epistemology, and his ethics all in one place. I find, though, that the Phaedrus has most of that, and in a really entertaining sort of vein, right? Have you heard the term Platonic love? You'll hear it in this class, right? And it's usually meant to describe some sort of non-romantic, non-erotic kind of love. Well, we're going to get an account of Platonic love from Plato, right, which is, if we're going to call it Platonic love, where we should be getting our account of Platonic love from. But in discussing a really sort of good form of love, what Plato does in this very short, and we're only going the first 49 pages through this dialogue, is he unites his metaphysics, his epistemology, and his ethics. So, partially just to be different, right? And partially because it's an interesting, wonderful read, and an engaging, right, treatment of these important aspects of Plato's philosophy. So, to recap, first part of the class is going to be Socrates in Plato's 5 Dialogues, and Plato in Plato's Phaedrus, right? Where, confusingly, you'll also find a character Socrates. But as we look and compare these two books, we'll find that the position argued in the early work has fundamentally changed. So that's enough to lead me and some other scholars to believe that there's a distinction to be made between Socrates and Plato. Right? So that's your first part of the course, and we should be through that by when? October. Right? Then we move to the second part of the course. Still in ancient philosophy, we move to a guy by the name of Aristotle, or as it's sometimes actually more accurately pronounced, Aristoteus. Right? But you'll hear me call him Aristotle. Dig him up and ask him. That's my attitude with these guys. The Nicomachean Ethics, and we are just reading books 1, 2, and 3. They're like 10. All right, so this will get you through the section of the Nicomachean Ethics on the good life. The theme of this book is happiness, right? Which we all want, right? But what is it? That's the embarrassing part. Aristotle's going to define it and give us almost like a football strategy for how to attain our goals. All right. This book is one part hard philosophy, based on a pretty interesting metaphysical position. Right? This part is one part, as the title would suggest, ethics. Right? So it's going to tell you how to make the choices that you make, and it's going to delineate between that which is good for us and that which is not. Right? And in that manner, right, it grounds sort of a normative claim. A normative claim is one that tells you what you should do. Right? So, and in addition, right, Nicomacheus was a child that Aristotle knew. Right? This is, I forget whether it's his brother's child, his nephew, or what, but nonetheless, Nicomacheus, as a part of the introduction to this book is also one part child rearing manual. Right? And in addition to that, this is one of the first kind of self-helpy kind of books that is has been produced in Western culture as well. Aristotle's going to present you with a bootstraps method by which you can develop your character and manage this important aspect of human life, which is, according to Aristotle, productive of happiness. Right? So I'm looking forward to getting into that. That takes us to the halfway point in the course, but sadly there are 3 sections in the course, so the halfway point in the course isn't when your next exam is. After Aristotle, we will be turning to a fellow by the name of Thomas Hobbes. Right? Now, when we get to this section, right, the first 3 books in the course, Socrates wants to talk to you about justice. Right, and what we should do, right, with regard to a pretty interesting ethical position that we'll take a look at, right? Plato wants to talk about the good, the true, and the beautiful, and in this specific dialogue, love, right? So, pretty happy, go lucky, puppy dogs, ice cream, and then, of course, Aristotle, in the Nicomachean Ethics, is talking about happiness, right? So, like I say, these 3 texts represent the sort of puppy dogs and ice cream section of this class. And usually when I hit the midway point in the class, right, what I tell people is that, well, hopefully there's a Monty Python fan or 2 out there. Now for something completely different, right? We then turn to Thomas Hobbes and one of the most interesting works in political philosophy that has been produced, right? The Leviathan, right? Which is, well, it's named after a big scary sea monster, right? And he talks about the natural condition of mankind, which is not very nice, right? And one of the central themes throughout this book is power and creating sort of a strong, stable institution to exercise political power that will be sort of nicely in our best interest, right? In all of our best interest, right? Even though there's going to be some nastiness with it. He's got sort of a negative account of human nature, whereas the previous theorists are going to be fairly optimistic about human nature, right? So this represents sort of an important tradition from ancient to modern philosophy. I said transition, not tradition, right? Transition, right? So anyhow, that will mark the turning point in the course, and Thomas Hobbes marks the end of section 2 of the course, right? So we're going Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Hobbes. And then in the final section of the course, now for something completely different, right? We are going to turn to 2 existentialists, right? Who I studied in my earlier grad school incarnation. And they are interesting ones. And I'll tell you why I add these 2 figures together and introduce them at the same time. Right? First we have Soren Kierkegaard, who has more pseudonyms than I've got pairs of socks. Right? And for him, the pseudonyms actually wind up being fairly instructive. Right? This is, here, I should have had this marked off earlier. Here we go. Anticlimacus is the name of the pseudonym that we will be reading in The Sickness Unto Death, a Christian psychological exposition for upbuilding and awakening. Right? And as one of the video lecturers that I fall back on for a little bit of support likes to say, none of that is going to happen. Right? His name is Rick Roderick. You'll like him. So, nonetheless, Soren Kierkegaard is a religious existentialist. Right? He starts from a position wherein we are absolutely free and absolutely responsible. Right? But he is a religious existentialist. Right? So, faith and taking a leap of faith and having a relationship with the divine is going to be very important to what it means to be a human being and to live a human life that overcomes suffering for Kierkegaard. Right? So, that's Soren Kierkegaard. We'll turn to him next, and believe it or not, for this big heavy book, which I've been using for a number of semesters, you should probably be able to find some used copies of it. We're reading one very small selection, and my apologies about that. It's just I want the freedom to jump around and call your attention to other aspects of Kierkegaard as well. But nonetheless, this is probably the most expensive book on the list of books, but it's probably the best. The Hongs actually have the best translation. So, after very, very religious existentialist Soren Kierkegaard, sort of proto-existentialist, I guess, we will be turning to a fellow by the name of Friedrich Nietzsche. Right? A very intimidating-looking fellow with his classic big honkin' mustache, and very famous for a couple of statements that have been misquoted and misrepresented throughout the history of Western philosophy, right? Or, well, recent history, right? This is the most contemporary, he died in 1900, right? So we're only 112 years from that now. So this is, believe it or not, pretty contemporary, right, in philosophical circles, right? So Friedrich Nietzsche is very famous for his central claim, which is God is dead. So, religious existentialists who starts from a position of absolute freedom and absolute responsibility, right? We are projecting ourselves into nothingness and, in a sense, filling ourselves with meaning. Right? And imbuing the world with meaning around us. Right? But it's all done through faith and a leap of faith and grace and what have you. Right? Nietzsche, God is dead. We've slain him, his blood is on our hands, etc., etc. That's the Madman. You can find it in here on page 98. A very interesting short little snippet. I'll call your attention to it when we get to this section. And what we are reading out of the Portable Nietzsche is Twilight of the Idols. Sounds fun, doesn't it? All right. So Friedrich Nietzsche is also very famous for a claim that you'll hit in Twilight of the Idols. You ever wonder where that expression comes, whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger? Life School of War, Twilight of the Idols, Maxims and Arrows section, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get there. Now, the reason why I butt these guys up against one another is to introduce you generally to existentialism. Existentialism, which starts from a position of our absolute freedom and our absolute responsibility. Right? Now, the interesting thing about religious existentialism and atheistic existentialism, I've given you the two archetypes of these positions, is that in either case, right, you're absolutely free, absolutely responsible, and you have to figure it out on your own. A leap of faith helps. You're absolutely free, you're absolutely responsible. You have to figure out it out on your own, but he denies the leap of faith, right? But existentially, right? God, no God, right? Can we know God? No. Can we know God? No. Different reasons, same conclusion. Free, responsible, work it out ourselves, right? So, in terms of existentialism, faith, no faith, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? Except insofar as these guys are going to be presenting you with arguments about what is healthy and properly human and will allow you to maintain, a healthy disposition towards life. Right? So, anyhow, those are the texts for the course. Buy them. You'll need them. I'll know if you don't have them. If you don't have them, you're going to be in trouble in the course. But I've made them cheap enough that you should be able to get them. There are also, I don't want to encourage this kind of thing because it's important when I say turn to page 22 that you'll have page 22 to look at, but there are online versions of these texts as well. Right? It's if you go that route to save a little bit of money, you might run into some problems when I say on page 22 of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics he does X, Y, and Z. Discuss the X, Y, and Z he does on page 22, because you might not have the page 22, you might not get the reference, and you would that way be putting yourself at a bit of a disadvantage. Right? So these are the books I want. I've chosen them for good reasons. I've chosen them partially because they're cheap on you guys. I'm actually going back to school myself, and I know all too well how expensive things can get. I've got some textbooks to buy this semester myself. So I've tried to be as friendly and kind to you as possible with that. So, on to evaluation. Right? There will be 2 midterms and a final exam, and participation in the course will be tracked through your engagement with a discussion board, right, or a forum, right? I'll say a little bit more about each of those things. Now, both of the midterms and the final are exactly the same format, right? They are going to be 6 longer answer, repeat, longer answer questions, right? For these questions, I will isolate either a passage of a text or a central idea, and usually ask you to do more than one thing about it. Explain it in your own words, critically evaluate it, smash it up against another idea and see if they're consistent with one another or what sort of conflicts emerge, that sort of thing. So read those questions carefully. Right? I'm not trying to fool you. Right? The problem is that philosophy is philosophy. It's dense. It's thick thinking. It's trying to think about things that we traditionally, in what a philosopher by the name of Edmund Husserl would call our naive worldview, right? Not think about, right? Philosophers, in a sense, problematize everyday common experience, right? These arguments that we're going to be reading are going to present you with, like, in a sense, nothing new, right? You've thought about this before. Is there a God? Isn't there a God? Do we have a soul? What is the self? Is it something that is tied to my body, or is it something that floats above my body and has some sort of permanence to it? Am I the same person I was yesterday and will be in a week? Right? What's the underlying nature of reality? How do I come to know anything? When Joe says that he knows for sure that X, right? On what basis does Joe claim to know X, and is that a sound basis, right? And what should I do, right? I want to be able to tell Susie that she did something wrong. How do I make that argument in a way that I can actually demonstrate that it's true that Susie has done something wrong, or Susie should do something else, Right? These are all the sorts of questions that, we're living a human life. We can't help but ask these questions. Right? Philosophy is the discipline that tries to ask these questions in an intelligent way and answer them in some sort of systematic, rigorous fashion. Right? Now, the interesting other thing about philosophy is that these philosophers are in dialogue with one another too. So, I mean, you'll turn to your exam, you'll see your 6 questions. You're expecting 3 on Socrates, 3 on Plato. Right? But it's going to get a little bit more muddy than that because Socrates and Plato were in dialogue with one another. Plato and Aristotle were in dialogue with one another. Hobbes makes explicit reference to Aristotle. Nietzsche makes explicit reference to Socrates, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're trying to do is jump in the middle of like a 100-year-old conversation, right? So that's what we're doing. So back to the exam questions. You can see I'm fond of my tangents. Sorry about that. Now, what I'll be asking you to do is try and, it's not a list of facts that we're interested in as I evaluate you in this course. It's relations between ideas and issues that relate to those ideas being critically evaluated on your part. Right? So I want to stress that these exams are writing intensive. If you turn to the syllabus, page 2, under evaluation, I'll just read it here. This course is divided into 3 sections containing 2 philosophers each. Each of the midterm examinations and the final examination for this course will test the section we are working on only. Right? That is, they won't be comprehensive. But like I've just given away, these theories build on one another. So late in the course, I'm presupposing that you've already taken a lot of the early work in the course. Right? Each exam will consist of 3 longer answer questions related to each of the particular philosophers for a total of 6 questions. Questions will be designed to test both reading comprehension and a more general understanding of the ideas that we have studied. The questions will require students to frequently take a critical stance towards the material and will reflect both the text and the discussion boards and what went on these video lectures and whatever supplements I tossed out here. Please note that these consist of longer answer questions. I know I'm repetitive, aren't I? All right. As such, a minimum of 2 paragraphs of discussion, argument, reflection, exegesis are expected for each response to be considered sufficient. I suppose I should define my terms. Exegesis is what I do when I am trying to, in my own words, explain somebody else's position. Right? So I'm almost exclusively doing exegesis in this course. As I'm presenting Nietzsche, right? I'm not presenting my position, I am presenting, in my own words and interpretation of the position that's offered in black and white in front of you. Right? And that's different than critical engagement, reflection, or argument. Right? So we'll make all of those distinctions good and clear. Now, the important thing I mentioned here is that you'll need a minimum of 2 paragraphs. Right? First off here, it's when I say a minimum of 2 paragraphs, I'm telling you how to get a C. That's a minimum. That's an adequate answer for a middle-of-the-road grade. Right? My advice with these questions, I've given you a minimum because in the past I've had far too general responses to these questions that consist of 3 sentences. Note that each of these midterms and the final are graded out of 30. It's 6 questions. Do the math, that's 5% of your final grade per question. If I get 3 sentences, even if they are the most beautifully composed, grammatically correct, crazy run-on sentences, right? That's 1, 2, 3 points. And that's assuming that you're being clear, 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 and your sentences have acted like scalpels to the material. Right? So generally, it's probably going to take you more than even the 2-paragraph minimum. I should also define a paragraph. A paragraph is minimally 1, 2, 3 sentences. So, right, what I'm getting in a 3-sentence response is half of what I'm looking for, and the maximum grade that'll get is a 2.5 out of 5 for the effort, right? So what you have to do, right, is really dig in with this material, and what you have to do is to demonstrate. These exams are your chance to demonstrate that you know what the heck you're talking about, right? So, these exams, I'm going to post them, all of them, both midterms and the final, to Moodle 5 days before they're due. Right? Now, I have to admit, I'm stealing this method from professors of mine in grad school. Right? But I really like this method of testing. I remember in my undergraduate philosophy classes, I would come in and we had like an hour to sit down and answer all these questions, and you know, it's do or die, and I hadn't seen the questions before, and I look at the question, and what I found is I needed time to think. Right? I needed time to reflect, to really chew on the material in order to have an intelligent response to the question. I'm trying to give you that time. The other thing that this does is it should eliminate a lot of the test anxiety for people who have test anxiety. Right? It's not a do-or-die exam where you go in, you've got an hour, and oh my God, can I answer this question? What this is a do or learn how to do class. Right? I think that's pedagogically, in terms of instruction, a heck of a lot more valuable. Right? So, those are the exams. Like I say, I'll post the questions 5 days in advance. Read over the questions as soon as I give them to you, and ask me any questions that you've got about the questions. I'll do my best to answer any questions that come my way. If you need a Skype meeting, we can set that up. And what I've decided to do this semester is to give you sort of a mock question and generate a mock answer for that mock question, that, you know, just so you know the sort of scope of the answer, what sort of thing that you're going to be up to. I've got a bank of old questions and a bank of old model answers. No big deal for me to do. So I'll give you an example for each of these exams of the sort of thing that I'm looking for. All right, that's exams. Now on to the discussion board. Now, the cool thing about this is that it treats the course like what a course is supposed to be treated like. I never would have made it through undergraduate philosophy without the other students. Without the other students. Philosophy is dialectical. These philosophers we're studying wouldn't have made it through their philosophical enterprises without other figures to dialogue with. Right? You'll see this in the first set of background videos that I give you on the Pre-Socratics. The Pre-Socratics were a big honkin' bunch of theorists that all dialogued with one another, disagreed with one another, their positions influenced one another, and they all influenced the first philosopher that we know anything substantial about, which is Socrates, who was already in dialogue with those who came before him. Now, I want the same sort of thing to go on in this course, where you are in dialogue with one another, and, in a sense, workshopping this material. And think about why you pay for a course in this. You've priced the books, you know they're fairly cheap. You know what your tuition costs, and except for the rubber stamp on your forehead that says, degree authorized, you're smart, go out there and try and find a job. Right? Aside from that sort of accreditation, right, what you're getting out of this course is, me, right? Somebody with a bit of background and your go-to guy that if you really get stuck you can contact, but you're also getting each other. Right? One big honkin' reading group filled with people all concerned with the same material that you're concerned with. And I can tell you from recent experience that these sorts of reading groups are really hard to throw together once you leave or start to distance yourself from academic institutions. Right? So this is invaluable. Right? This is going to be really handy. So for the discussion board, the discussion forum, you'll see that for each of the 6 figures, the 6 philosophers, that we are going to study this semester, I'm going to pose a specific directed question, right? Just to kind of get the ball rolling in your attempt to understand the material, right? And on the discussion forum, right, I expect you to engage with this question, engage with the theorist, engage with each other, enter into debates, offer criticisms, that sort of thing. I should be clear, though, that the forum is for academic, sort of instructional purposes only. It's not a class blog where, hey, what did you do last weekend? Oh, I went down to Campus Martius for blah, 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 etc. It's not going to be that sort of forum, right? It's for the discussion of the material, right? Acceptable responses. It's really, when I assess this 10%, what I'm looking for is that you have engaged in a living discussion with the other people in the class, or attempted to. Right? That's where your grade comes from. Right? I expect you to engage with each of these topics, so that's 6 for the semester. And by engage, I don't mean, well, what I think is blah, 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 done, and moving on. What I mean by engage, right, is, well, John, I like how you explained that, but I think there might be another little issue that you're ignoring here. Maybe if we think about it in terms of, and then somebody will reply to you and you'll reply to I want it to be a conversation, right? Because so much of this class is one way, right? I put this on YouTube, you screen it, you understand it, and then you toss me an exam back, and I just boringly sit down and say, yeah, you got it, no, you didn't get it, and here are some model answers for you. That's not the way philosophy should be done. It should be a conversation, right? So, when I assess your participation portion of the grade, right, what I'll be looking for is evidence that you have engaged in a lively debate about this material, right? So, posts like, I agree, or this is stupid, or when is the professor going to get those exams back to us, etc., etc., right? Discussion forum, not the forum for it, right? I agree, or this is stupid, perfectly acceptable things to say, right? Those are opinions. Opinion is not a dirty word. What I want to see is the reasons that support those opinions. This is stupid, right? I can't tell you how many times I've picked up recent works in philosophy and read through them and said, well, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read. But there's another 4 paragraphs of explanation that goes into grounding that position. This is silly, and this is why this is silly, and this is why I think this is silly, and I can see that you might argue this, and to be charitable, I've got to give it credit for that, etc. Right? So that's what you're doing on the discussion board. Discussion boards close at the same time as the final exam. I'll actually hide them from you. So if, like, for example, at the end of the class, you're reading something in Nietzsche, right, and the first section, the first really meaty section of Twilight of the Idols that we're taking a look at is called The Problem of Socrates. But if you think of something in Nietzsche's treatment of Socrates and want to go back to the Socrates forum, that should be there for you, and that should be really valuable, right? Because we're trying to develop a well-rounded understanding of all of this material. So as soon as you're done section 1, you're not done with section 1, right? Because you're all in this course because you want to understand all of this material, right? So anyhow, that's what we're doing with the discussion board. The exams I've went over, minimum 2 paragraphs. That's a minimum. That's not a maximum. I don't place a maximum on these, right? And this is because some people are really concise and couple of paragraphs, substantial paragraphs, might just do it for some people. Other people might like to use a longer example in their responses, and in that case, right, it's going to take a little bit more in terms of word count. I don't mind reading a lot. Right? It's when I get one page with 2 or 3 sentence responses to each of these 6 questions that are longer than 2 or 3 sentences in some cases themselves. Right? It's just not going to be sufficient. Right? So if you want a 4-point, answer the questions until they're answered. Right? And if you want guidance on that, contact me and I'll see what I can do for you. All right? So instructional technology for this course, Moodle is your hub. All right, so everything will be posted to Moodle. Your forums will be governed through Moodle. These videos, as you know, I emailed this one to you, but you can find these videos on Moodle, and that's where the new links will come from. Supplementary videos that'll go along with this course, because I like to present you with more than one interpretation of this material, because to be sure what I'm doing here is I'm interpreting and I'm feeding you an interpretation of this material. And, well, I don't want this to become the Grant Yoakum course. I want this to become the philosophy course, right? Which involves taking into account the longer debate, or the larger debate, right? Notes and handouts, for the most part, model answers to the exams, mock exam questions, that sort of thing. Moodle again, course assignments, submitted through Moodle, posted to Moodle. Moodle is the point, I guess, right? The video lectures will be on YouTube, but you can get lost navigating my channel. I don't maintain it very well, so I will give you playlists for each of these videos, right? So, important dates. I've broken this down for you. Midterm exam, first one's due October 12th by noon, right? So that means by October 7th by noon, I will have it posted to Moodle for you. Midterm 2, November 9th by noon, right? So that means the 4th by noon, I'll post it for you. And the final exam will be posted on December 8th and due December 13th. Unlucky, I know, but it is what it is. And I said 2011 there as well. I meant 2012, right? So, and that will be posted by 5 minutes to midnight, right? Which is as close to the whole day as Moodle will allow me to give you on this. A couple of notes about a couple of changes I've noticed to Moodle, teaching ethics online this summer. What happens is that for some reason they have allowed you to submit drafts and then resubmit and continue resubmitting ad nauseum, right? By the deadline for the course, what I do is I have to go in and lock submissions. I don't know why it does this, but what Moodle does is generates an email to you at this point, at that point, and tells you I've given you feedback on your submission. I haven't given you feedback of your submission because these things take time to grade, but right at the deadline or due date, it will tell you that. I don't know why, I don't know how to shut it off. I'll endeavor to figure out how to shut it off, but for some reason, teaching and learning likes to reinvent the wheel often, right? So those are your deadlines. I've given you a tentative reading schedule here, the week of September 3rd, which is this week, and I know I'm at the end of this week, I'm sorry, internet trouble, is hello. We'll go over the syllabus, the course policy, overview, and a general introduction to the course, and that's what we're doing right now. So this video is your assignment for this week. Next week, September 10th to the 14th, is going to be the pre-Socratics, those philosophers that are before or pre-Socrates. That's all that means. All right. There are 3 that I'm going to treat. It's just a video. It's just background material. I'm going to ask you next week to screen that video and to think about it. There are 3 that I'm going to treat. There are 2 that are really important, Heraclitus and Parmenides. So I will be using them to frame the situation that Socrates engages with, and then the ball really starts rolling, all right? Weeks 3 and 4 have to do with Socrates, Plato's 5 Dialogues, the Apology and the Crito. And weeks 5 and 6, I give you that time to read Plato's Phaedrus to page 49 and screen all of the related videos. Right? So that's the first section. Right? And right in your tentative reading schedule, I give you the due date for each of the exams as well, and so on and so forth. Now, back to some things I skipped at the beginning here, because I don't like to do this at the beginning. It gets me finger wagging, and this is all just boring general policies and procedures for the course, right? The first thing is plagiarism, right? I can tell you that I've had a lot of cases of plagiarism in my several years teaching for Oakland, and Oakland University, like me, treats this very seriously. So the first thing you find in the section marked plagiarism under general policies, starting on page 1 over to page 2 of your syllabus, gives you the student handbook definition for plagiarism, and I've even given you a reference for that. Just for our purposes here, I'm going to read it over. All right? Plagiarizing the work of others. Plagiarism is using someone else's work or ideas without giving that person credit. By doing this, a student is, in effect, claiming credit for someone else's thinking. Whether the student has read or heard the information used, the student must document the source of the information. When dealing with written sources, for example, something you find on the internet, right, a clear distinction should be made between quotations, which reproduce the information from the source word for word within quotation marks, and paraphrases, which digest the source of the information and produce it in the student's own words. This is the kicker. Both direct quotations and paraphrases must be documented. Even if the student rephrases, condenses, or selects from another person's work, the ideas are still the other person's, and failure to give credit constitutes misrepresentation of the student's actual work and plagiarism of another's ideas. Then it gets fairly obvious here. Buying a paper or using information from the World Wide Web or Internet, always seems sort of hokey to me, right? Without attribution and handing it in as one's own work is plagiarism. That's Oakland University's definition for plagiarism. Right? So, God, don't do it. Don't do it. I've got a knack for detecting it. Right? And I'm sort of known as a hard cop on it, right? If you've got a problem with the course material, contact me, right? Why is this such a bad idea for you to do? I've got a zero tolerance policy on plagiarism. Any student suspected of this form of theft will automatically be passed on to an academic review board. That's through the Dean of Students' office. You know why that happens? Because when I sign my contract, Oakland University has authorized me as an adequate judge of your understanding of this material. Though they do not let me determine authorship. So if I find a case of plagiarism, I suspect that this is plagiarized, I compile my evidence, that sort of thing, I can't just say, you plagiarized, you failed this assignment, or you plagiarized, you failed this course, as the course policy says, right? I have to pass it on to a committee that determines whether or not it's a case of plagiarism. That's not even my call. It's just a mechanism built into my contract. If I don't do it, I'm in deep doo-doo, right? And I need this job. I need it, right? So, right, as generous and kind and soft-hearted as I'd like to be to you in a case where I've detected plagiarism, I can't be. My job, a mechanism that's built into the university sort of bureaucratic system, has me hand it to the next person down the line, who is the Dean of Students' office, right? My course policy is Automatic failure, not of the assignment, not of that section of the course, but of the course. You automatically fail, right? If I find you've done this, you fail, right? But on top of that, it then goes before a board, right? And that committee, including guidance counselors, the dean of students, other faculty, representatives for the student themselves, and me, right, determine what, in addition to failing the course, needs to be done. I've never seen it happen, but expulsion from the university is possible. Right? They could kick you out of school. Right? Then your entire education, it's gone. It's wasted. Your transcript's marked for the rest of your life. Right? You want to get any credit for these courses you've done in university, right? They're going to want to see your transcript, and your transcript says that effectively you have stolen. Now, this is, like I say, I hate this part of the introduction lecture, because you guys, I don't even know you. We haven't met, right? And you haven't done anything, and here I am wagging my finger at you and that sort of thing. I should be clear about these policies. These are policies on the syllabus because I've had problems in the past, right? So we're better understanding this material and understanding this policy before we start out, right? And you're responsible for all of the material in the syllabus as well. I've explained what plagiarism is. Don't do it. If you're afraid you're doing it, say that this internet source describes it this way, right? And then you can, the wild thing about the cases of plagiarism that I come across is a set of quotation marks, a reference, and some form of analysis, and that's a good paper, right? I don't want you to be afraid of reading. I don't want you to be afraid of going to the library and picking up an article on Plato's Phaedrus, right? Or checking out, you know, the Wikipedia entry for Platonic love, right? In fact, I'll have you do that, right? Because there's something fishy on Wikipedia, right? But, right, if you're taking any of the material from these sites, tell me what you've taken. Tell me what you've made of what you've taken, right? And that is a method for getting a good grade. Just taking it and trying to pass it off as yours might get you expelled, so don't do that. Okay, like I say, hi. I like you guys already, right? We're going to have a fun semester. This is going to be great, right? Don't plagiarize, because I've had problems in the past, but I know these problems aren't with you, and I hope we can have a nice relationship. If it doesn't come up, everything is great. Okay, missed exam policy. Right. This is important. This even just came up last semester where somebody had missed an exam, and 4 days after I submitted the final grades to the sale, right, I get an email from a student that said, "Oh, I missed the second midterm." Well, the course is over by then, right? It's too late by then. So this is why I've got a missed exam policy. In the unfortunate event that you miss an exam due date or deadline due to serious illness or death in the family, you must notify me via email or by telephone. The departmental office takes messages and forwards them on to me as well, right? Either before the date and time in question, which is preferable. Before is preferable, but sometimes it's not possible, right? I get that. Or within 12 hours of the deadline or due date. Otherwise, I won't be able to offer an extension. You know, that sounds hard, right? But I post this material 5 days in advance so that you can get an early start, right? If you find that you're not going to be able to meet that deadline or due date, talk to me. Talk to me. That's all it takes. It's Grant. I'm really struggling with this. I've had pneumonia for the past week. It's blah blah blah, and I'll be able to get you an extension. Right? I'm nice. I'm good with that. I'm friendly. This is happy. Like the first half of this course is puppy dogs and ice cream and love and happiness and justice and all of that. Right? And even the last part of the course is sort of in a quirky, sort of modernist way that, right? But nonetheless, right? Talk to me, right? And I'm here to help you through this course. You do well, I do well, everybody does well, right? So, yeah, it's if you're missing a deadline, you're just not going to be able to make the assignment due date, contact me, we'll work something out, right? But contact me preferably before or within 12 hours. You do that, I work with you. You contact me 3 weeks later, say, hey, you know, I can't help you because I've posted model answers. I would have to design a new exam and then have to grade that exam, and I've given you way more time with this material than everybody else in the class, so I've got to be harder on you on that redesigned exam. So that's it. You don't want that. Just contact me 12 hours. Email. I'm really going to do my best to stay on top of all of your emails this semester, but you know, I have a lot of students that the only way to contact me is via email. Alright? And I'm not just teaching for Oakland this semester. I've got another university that I'm doing, and like I say, I've got my own educational requirements and publications and grants, and I manage a society and that sort of thing. And what that works out to is hundreds of emails a week, right? So it should be understood that email is not an instant form of communication, right? Even in cases where I email somebody in the office directly across the hall from me, frequently they don't get it for a little while, all right? So we should understand that it's not instant. I'll do my best to answer your emails in a timely fashion, but due to the high volume of emails associated with these courses and everything else that, you know, we do these days, all right, I do fall behind from time to time. If you have questions about the course, the best and most direct manner for these questions is to arise in person, but of course it's an online class, so that's not always super possible. If I have a number of similar questions regarding course material or procedure, I frequently send a mass email to everyone addressing the question, because if I get 3 emails asking me about this, you know, that means 30 of the 50 students that are enrolled in both sections of this class, right, probably have the same question, so I answer it all, right? Frequently I answer 3 themed questions of that sort in one of these bulk emails as well. Sometimes I even record a video to address the question, because I find that's helpful and humanizing as well, right? Now, there is an additional requirement here. Oakland University requires that all Oakland University correspondence should be done through Oakland University email. So I'm contractually obligated not to respond to your emails for course purposes if they're from Gmail or Hotmail or me.com or whatever, right? So it's got to be at oakland.edu. Otherwise, I'm not allowed to respond. Bureaucracy, you know. The discussion board policy, it's keep it topical, keep it friendly. If there are, you know, inflammatory remarks on there, I'll penalize you and remove them, that sort of thing, right? So I've already gone through that. And reading schedule, I've gone through. Now the last thing that I want to mention here, and I'm approaching an hour, so this is good, the first one should be about an hour, is the grading scheme. You'll find on page 3 of your syllabus, after the tentative reading schedule, it's a letter grade to percentage point conversion rate. Read it, familiarize yourself with it, and this will save you freaking out later, right? Because an A ranges from 80 all the way up to 100%, right? A B is 70 through 79.9. A C is 60 through 69.9. D is 50 through 59.9, and anything lower than 50 is a fail. All right. So that's your letter grade to percentage point conversion. What you'll see is grades out of 30 submitted to your midterms. Right. So that'll give you, well, let's do the math. Right. Page 1 of the syllabus. Midterms are 30 each, and another 30 for the final is 90, and discussion board for another 10 makes it 100, right? So it's straightforward. You know 1 point equals 1% in the course. So you can just add to figure out your percentage. Now, from your percentage, you figure out what the letter grade is. I know this is weird, it's different and all of that, but what I have at the bottom of the syllabus here is the Oakland University Office of the Registrar letter grade to 4-point grade conversion chart. This is what they give me, this is what I've given you. This is, I take your letter grade and change that into a 4-point grade. So, your letter grade is your grade, right? So this is just sort of a rubric for changing percentages into a letter grade. Pay attention to what your letter grade is, right? And that'll save you freakouts with regard to the class. The last thing that I want to say is sort of a word of warning to you, right? The first midterm for this class, which is, I said, October 12th it's due, so you'll have it on October 7th. Pay good attention to that, because that's 30% of your grade. That's 30%. That's a big deal, right? And far too frequently, I have students get a little bit into this course, right? Check out that first midterm, completely bomb it, completely freak out, and it's because they opened the midterm exam file. You see, through Moodle I can see when you're looking at what, right? I can get activity reports. And I can see that students have opened the midterm exam file 4 hours before it's due, and then gone to sit down and write it. They found out that they didn't have time. They didn't really understand the material. They didn't give themselves the time to set themselves up for success. That's my big advice to you. Give yourself the time to set yourself up for success. I'm going to post these well in advance. You sit down, you read over the questions. You start point forming out your answers. You pull out the relevant passages in the text. You talk it through on the discussion forums. You'll have time to do that. If you're having real problems with the questions, email me and I'll be able to go over the questions with you, maybe point you in the right direction, right? Rescreen the video lectures, because everything that's on the exams is referred to in some way, shape, or form, right, in the video lectures as well. Just give yourself time, right? I know our culture grew up on Jeopardy, where we've got to click in really quick and have the answer really quick, all right? And that's our measure of intelligence. That is a really weird, wild, modern view of intelligence, all right? What I want to point out to you guys is that intelligence has to, at least in part, be a result of time spent thinking, spent working through issues and questions. We're not interested in facts here. We're not interested in bullet points. We're not interested in quick, speedy, adequate answers for points, right? We're interested in understanding, or wisdom, which philosophy is literally the love of. Philia, which is a form of love that we'll encounter when we treat Plato, and Sophia, wisdom. All right? So, hopefully, we are going to have a really fun semester. All right? So, good days, one for each of you, and I'll be posting the pre-Socratic stuff very soon, and let me know if there's anything at all that you read, or anything from this video or anything else in the course that you need some clarification with. Alright, cheers.